Hi everyone, this is Michael Bad Goblin Games. We're going to talk about the turn sequence and order system that we use in Ages of Conflict. Now, we figured that these two topics are best covered in a single video as the two are tightly integrated in Ages of Conflict. So it's important to understand that the orders determine what your unit is permitted to do in a turn, while the turn sequence determines at what point in the turn order that order is carried out. Ages of Conflict is an orders-based system. So this means that every unit in the game receives an order that determines what actions the unit can take when it's activated. Orders are assigned to units with tokens that are issued face down to conceal them from your opponent. So just as an example, we have some orders here. If I want to assign this infantry unit a charge order, I'm just going to put that face down. That way my opponent doesn't know exactly what that unit's going to do. So let's talk about each of the individual orders here. We'll kind of cover them briefly. So the first one we'll talk about is our change formation order. This order permits a unit to change its formation. So for example, this is the order I would use if I want this infantry. So right now they're just in a standard line formation. If I want them to adopt, say, a column or a shield wall, then this is the order I would give the unit. An important thing to understand with this order is that the unit cannot move while it has a change formation order, and it cannot cast missile weapons. Next up is our charge order. Charge allows a unit to move at a charge pace, which is the quickest movement we have in the game. So you can engage the enemy with that charge order, or it's also a good order to give if you just want your unit to cover as much ground as quickly as possible. If I want them to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible, then the charge order is what I would issue. So units with charge orders cannot use missile weapons, though they can move into hand combat against an enemy. The benefit of moving into combat with the charge order is that if my unit has a higher presence, then I may cause that enemy unit to flee. There is a potential penalty with the charge order in that there is a possibility that if I move with the charge order and I don't meet an enemy, then I may lose my formation. I may become what's known as disorganized. And we talk about that a bit more in the movement video. First, missiles. This order allows a unit with missile weapons, such as bows or slings, to cast their missiles before any other unit is permitted to attack. So when we get to combat, units on first missiles act before any other unit, okay? Because all they did that turn was prepare to shoot or to toss their sling bullets or stones or what have you. Units on first missiles are not permitted to move. The only thing they can do is cast their missiles. Next up is march. March is probably like the all-around move and attack order. So with march, my unit can move. My unit can move into hand combat. My unit can move and later on during combat cast missile weapons. So it's kind of the good all-around order to give. And last up, we have second missiles. Second missiles is used by units that are equipped with slower missile weapons, so such as muskets and cannons. Basically, missiles that just take longer to reload, longer to prepare to fire. Now, units with second missiles are not permitted to move. Okay. Now, let's look at how the orders integrate with the turn sequence. Now remember, while the orders determine what a unit can do in a turn, the turn sequence tells us when the units carry out that order. Now before continuing, I do want to point out that Ages of Conflict is an alternating action system. This means that players alternate activating units. So rather than, say, the I go, you go system in which one player moves all of their units and then the other player moves all of their units, or the other player moves all their units and then casts all their missiles and then goes to the other player who moves all their units and casts all their missiles. This is alternating actions. So Just as a quick example, if I have this infantry here and my opponent has this cavalry, I activate my infantry and I flip the order. They do whatever they say they move. My opponent then picks a unit on that they control. They flip that token and then they activate that unit, and then back to me, back to my opponent, and back and forth, okay, until everyone's been activated. So we went with this system, with an alternating action system, just because we want to keep players engaged in the game. With an I go, you go system, there are circumstances, particularly in a large battle, in which you may not really do anything in the game for 10 to 15 minutes. With the alternating actions, you're doing something in the game every 10 to 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds at the longest. So you are constantly engaged. Now let's go on to the turn sequence and talk about the individual phases within each turn. So the first is the issue orders phase. So this is the first phase. In this phase, all units are issued orders or issued an order face down. This is not alternating actions. Just grab a handful of your orders and start issuing them, and both players issue the orders simultaneously. There's no alternating actions in this phase. So the important thing to remember, though, is that every unit needs an order. Okay, if you forget to give a unit an order, it basically loses its turn, unless your opponent's kind of graceful and says, "Hey, go ahead." Otherwise, though, if you forget to issue an order to a unit, then that unit has lost its turn. After all units have received an order, we move to initiative. So initiative determines what player acts first. So you don't know whether you're going first or second each turn until after the orders have been issued. Initiative is simple. Each player rolls their dice pool, and the number of dice you're rolling just depends upon your general's command. If you aren't familiar with dice pools, check out our core mechanic video in which we talk about dice pools a little bit more, okay? But for this simple example, we're just going to say each general has a command of 2d10, so we're rolling 2d10 for each. Our target number is a 6. So in this situation, the more 6s we have, the better. So this player rolls, and I guess the general was asleep because I rolled 2 1s. This one rolls, and we have a 9 and a 6, so 2 successes. So this player would activate first. After initiative is determined, we go on to our reveal orders and movement phase. Now, 2 things happen in this phase. Players take turns activating units by flipping over that unit's orders. If the order permits movement, then the unit is moved. Okay, so let's say that this player goes first, they flip a token. This unit has second missiles. Second missiles does not permit movement, so this unit does not actually move. We still flip the token, but they don't cast their missiles yet. But also second missiles does not allow movement, so they don't go anywhere. The other player then selects a unit to activate, flips an order. Actually, we're going to change that. Let's say I give them charge. Since charge permits movement, that unit would now move. Understand that when you activate a unit and it has an order that permits movement, if you want to move the unit this turn, you have to move it now. You can't flip the token and then later on in the turn come back and say, "Oh, now I want to move them." If you want to move the unit, you have to move them when you actually activate or flip over that token. So the reveal orders and movement phase ends when all orders have been revealed and units move, okay? Again, just understand that the only thing we're doing in this turn is flipping a token and moving. We are not engaging in combat. Now, after reveal order and movement, we do move on to the combat phase. And the combat phase consists of four sections. So first off is first missiles. So units with first missile orders can now cast their missiles. So if this unit had first missiles, they would now, use their bows, use their slings, whatever missile weapon they have, they would now use. What you might see pretty often in some situations is one player might have 3 units with first missiles while the other has none. And this simply just means that this player gets to activate, say, 3 units consecutively while this one has none. So that is something to keep in mind. After first missiles, we go to March. So again, if this unit had March orders, again, not hand combat, we're just dealing with missile weapons at this point. So if they had March orders and they had missile weapons, they can now cast those missiles. After March, we go on to hand combat. So any units that are locked in hand combat would now activate. They would fight a round of combat. We're not going to go in depth into combat here. We do have a completely separate video on combat. The important thing to understand is that combat between these 2 units is simultaneous. So let's just say the cavalry attacks first. If this company is removed as a casualty, before they attack, I don't just take them off the board, just kind of move them back a little bit. That way you remember that they still need to attack. So the cavalry attacks, this infantry company is actually getting removed as a casualty. Just slide them back, and then after they've attacked, then you can go ahead and take them off the board. After hand combat, we go on to the last phase, and that's our second missiles. So this is where units with second missiles will now have the opportunity to cast those missiles, whether they're cannons or heavy crossbows. Whatever weapon they had that requires second missiles and they have second missiles, they can go ahead and use them. So we went with this rather than, say, keeping track of reloads or how many turns it has been since they fired their weapon and what have you. So after second missiles, we move on to our end phase. So this is the end of the turn. This is where we basically perform cleanup tasks. So there's a few things that take place here. If there's any orders still kind of floating around on units, go ahead and remove them. If there's units with break tokens, we roll to remove those now. This is basically kind of like a rally mechanic. If you are, if you have reserves, you can roll to bring those onto the table now. If you're fighting a game of fantasy and there's your wizards, there might be spells you need to check to see if they end now. And this is where your wizards also replenish their casting pools. So end phase, basically just a cleanup phase. And that's really going to be it for our orders and turn sequence. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned a bit about how Ages of Conflict works. Please check out our other gameplay videos and join us on Facebook if you have any questions or suggestions. Thank you.